Hi, this is Jo DeRuyter, and today we're going to talk about a field-by-field guide for setting up vendors and customers in Business Central. So let's start with customers. When you're in the customer window, there's a lot to look at here. So first of all, in the list, you can always see the balance and the balance due, which can be different depending on the criteria. So if we go into balance, we can see here it's filtered to the customer and whether it's open. Balance due is filtered to whether it's open and what the due date is. And it's really looking at your system date to decide the due date. So this is more of a what's due now, and this is more of a what's due all together. But you can also see the sales, and of course if you turn your information on by clicking this information button, you can also see a lot about the customer from here. Open sales quotes, open sales orders, posted shipments, posted invoices, and then down below some really good information. The amount of their outstanding orders, the amount of their ship not invoiced, their payments to date, the last date a payment was received, total sales, their credit limit if you put one in, and overdue amounts. And so there's a really good amount of information here on this page. I'm going to turn off the filter so we can see more. So we can actually see their payments to date, and there are still more fields you can pull into the list. By adding field and personalizing, there's application method, whether to combine shipments, what their credit limit is. So if I pull in the credit limit right next to balance due, that's some really good information. If they were an intercompany partner, you could pull that in, payment terms, reminder terms, who's the salesperson on it. That tends to be something that people really want to know when they're looking at balances and things. So I can turn this off as done, and this is a nice little report in and of itself. I can see their balance, I can see their credit limit, their payments, sales all together. It's good. Also on this home page is new to set up a new customer, delete to delete a customer. Under home, you can register customer payments or just go ahead and send an email to this customer. You can also apply templates. We're going to be talking about that in just a second. Okay. So if I wanted to send an email, now my email is not turned on in my sample company, so I can't. But if you needed to communicate really fast, that's an excellent way. New document, so I can kick off for ADatum Corporation, which is highlighted, quotes, invoices, credit memos, and reminders. Reminders are very useful, and we'll have a whole other blog on how to do collections in BC. So from here I can also, instead of going in to look at the ledger entries, what are ledger entries? Ledger entries are every transaction that's occurred for this customer. Also available is to be able to see what applied to what and some visual cues as to what's been paid. This invoice is bold in red, meaning it's past due. Here's the due date. I can clearly see it. And of course, the remaining amount, which is the amount left due on this invoice, is still there, $1,400 or so. But this is every transaction they've ever made. Also from here, if I click the three dots, I can see by going to applied entries what invoice this paid, or invoices, right? And vice versa, I can be on an invoice, see applied entries, and see that there. See what it was applied to there. Now, other things you can do are set up payments or credit memos, and then come back in here and apply the entries. If you made a mistake, here's where you're going to unapply the entries. You can also find entries, look at the dimensions on this, and then see detailed ledger entries. Detailed ledger entries pretty much give you not only the initial entry, but the application to that entry. And if you're looking to build a report on this, there are some good configuration packages and API that you can pull out to see that kind of detailed what paid what. You can also see their statistics. That's a cute little informational. See all the emails you've ever sent to them. You can see your item tracking entries, and that is a feature I've turned on in my system. See the item references on this, and that has to do with inventory, and you can see all their return orders. You can also see their sales price list, their sales discounts, and other reports are available out here. So let's dive into the customer itself. I'm going to go through the top menu, and then we're going to start down this way. I'm going to turn off my information right now, but you can actually see details in the same information we saw on the first page or the list. You can also attach innumerable documents and be able to pull them up. Anybody can pull them up anywhere that has access to your Business Central. You can also insert links to their home pages and notes, copious notes that are date stamped and time stamped along with who posted the note. Let me go ahead and come out of that. Under Home, we've got Contacts. If you press Contacts, this is a list of all of the contacts for a datum. From here, you can create a new opportunity, create an interaction, a new quote, call them if you've got your computer set up, or if you're pulling up Business Central on your phone, super simple, send an email and export the contacts. Contacts themselves are easy to set up, and by the way, vendor and customer, employee, all of those contacts are in the same table. So in this, it's a number, the name of the company, type company or person. If you choose person, then you can choose which company that person's there for. You can also see the last interactions, what time it was modified, history for what you've sent them, and then of course their individual contact information and their individual information for what they've done with your company. So contact cards are also like mini CRM systems. Okay, so under request approval, if you've set up workflow and you're saying you can set up a customer but somebody needs to approve it, this is where they would come to approve it. You can kick off any new document from inside the customer, and you can control their prices and discounts. So if I went to the sales price list here, I can assign them to a setup price list. Okay, now there's other things we can do. Sales prices, you can go to your sales price list. You can see I don't have any set up here, but you could set up various sales prices and sales discounts. Don't get that confused with some other pricing areas, which we'll talk about. From the customer, I can get to the ledger entries again. This goes to the same place as the list link where we went to it before. So don't get confused. Dimensions. If you need to set up a default dimension for a customer, which means every time that customer is used on a transaction, those dimensions that you said you wanted to default in will automatically be on that transaction. You can see all the approvals back to their statistics. You can assign specific document layouts by going in here to the report ID and pulling up the report. And essentially, if your customer needs their invoices in a different format, that's how you would auto assign it to the customer. You can see all their ship to addresses. So we know that many of our customers have multiple locations. Those are going to be shipped to addresses, and you can add an innumerable number of ship to addresses for each customer. In each of these addresses is basically the same information we're going to see below in the setup of the main customer, including which contact is at this location, which of your location codes is going to ship to them by default, whether this address is tax liable or not, and if so, what is this address's area code. Pretty simplified stuff. Let me go into show more so we can see all the fields. You can also track emails, home pages, the shipment method for this particular location, shipping agent service, which could be like FedEx or anything like that. Okay, those are your contacts and your additional ship to addresses. Item references, you can see all of the items that you've sent them if you had. Or it can also default their item references and their colors and such. Attachments, if I go to my informational, I can also see all attachments here, but this is another place I can get to attachments from. And comments, I can make tons of comments on this customer and it's going to be dated over here. That's for internal communications. Your customers can have preferred bank accounts, and these preferred bank accounts are basically what's the code of the bank, what's the phone number, what's the bank account number, what's the transit number. And if you get ACH or lockbox deposits, you can set up BC to kind of use that information under the saved accounts here to automate or more automate your deposits. Direct debit mandates can also be set up. We don't use a lot of these, so I'm not going to talk about it right now, but SEPA direct debit mandates can also be set up. There's a ton of reports. A statement, so if I needed to print a statement, I can see their account details, their open entries, scheduled statements, and you can schedule statements in here, and their sales information. So again, like this is basically what their balance were, what their sales were on every given date, viewed by day. I can also view it by year and see the net change. So here's 2024, 2025. I don't know where this balance due came from in this sample company, but it's old. All right, synchronize. Are you going to synchronize across databases in BC? So if your databases or your companies all use the same customers or vendors, you can synchronize that. So if you change something in one, it changes it in all. You would have to, of course, do some setup to set up that synchronization, but it can be done. Actions, new document. Under actions are a lot of the same things we saw out here. So I can do new documents. If I go to other, there's other documents I can add. Request approval, we saw that there. Workflow, create approval workflow can be created from here. It can be created by anybody else in the workflow area. Some of the functions, templates, which we're going to talk about. Save as template, which we're going to talk about in just a minute. And then merge with is under functions. Let's say you've got people setting up customers and you've set up by accident a duplicate customer. You can always merge those two customers together pretty easily with merge with. You can also come in and post cash receipts from here, see their sales journals, register the customer payments based on their account that we set up, apply a Word template to this customer, or send an email. Applying a Word template is very much like controlling, like you could control the language in the email based on your Word templates. Related, you can see the history, sent emails, prices and discounts, invoice discounts. So if you want invoice level discounts, not line level discounts, but invoice level discounts. So no matter there to be 500 lines, you could put like a blanket 10% discount. It discounts the total of the invoice and not each line. Or you can do line level discounts as well as invoice discounts and give them like an extra 10% off on that line. But essentially, you want to put in minimum amounts and the discount percent that will be applied to all of their invoices across the board. So back to related. Sales, prepayment percentages. We're going to see another place we can set that up. And recurring sales lines. So you can set up recurring sales lines for each customer. And then essentially, when you're doing a new transaction, you can go to the prepare and use recurring sales lines. And again, another place to see the documents that have been sent to them. Here's a good place for So that's the top menu. Okay, let's get into setting up this customer. And by the way, we're going to spend a lot of time on the customer because when we get to the vendor, a lot of the fields are identical to what you see in the customer. So the number is great. Here's a little tip. You can change this number and come off of that field and actually change all the records in this database for this customer, and it's going to change that number for that customer to your new number. So this can be done. Unfortunately, it has to be done one at a time right now unless you get a developer to write a custom program to do it for you. So that was just that fast. A datum, if it's an intercompany partner code, right? So if you're doing intercompany AP, AR, and stuff like that, you would say in this particular company, it's this code, okay? Balance, these are the same balance due that we saw on the list for customers, and they're still drillable. So I can still drill down into them on the customer. If I wanted to give this customer a credit limit, this is where I would do it. If I wanted to block this customer from being used for shipments, I can block it here for invoicing or for all. Leaving it blank is not blocked. Privacy blocked, you can turn that on and it blocks all, right? I'm going to turn it off, but that's easy to do all. Salesperson codes. You'll need to set up your salespeople and then assign them here. Now you'll notice my show more is dropped down. This is what it looks like by default. If you click the show more, you'll get all the rest of this. Responsibility centers. This is like some CRM type functionality where I could put in a responsibility center, phone numbers, and all that stuff so I know who to contact in the event that I have to take care of this customer and they're in charge of it for some reason. Document sending profile, I tend to fill these out, okay? Why? If I'm sending email, let me get to select from full list and go to manage here. I'm going to edit this one so we can see it. In it, I've said printer, no. You can also say prompt for settings or use default settings. So if I'm just emailing them documents, I'm going to say yes, prompt for settings. If you do yes, default settings, you won't be able to customize who you're sending it to or anything like that. So yes, prompt for settings. And as you're attaching the document, do you want it a PDF, an electronic document, or a PDF and electronic document? You can also combine PDF documents if you're sending more than one at a time. Disk, do you want to save this to your hard drive or a location on your network? If so, is that PDF, electronic, or PDF and electronic? And if it's an electronic document through document exchange service or extended document, e-document service flow. So you can set up a lot in here, defaults for these customers. And since I'm assigning this email here, then when I go to print send, it's going to automatically know what I prefer. Total sales for this fiscal year, total cost, total profit, profit percent. And you always see the last date modified. You can disable search by name. If you do that, your users are going to have to memorize numbers. Other than that, they can just type in the name in any transaction and pull up the customer unless you've disabled that. Down in addresses, typical address 1, address 2. Country and regions are usually pre-set up. So if I go to select from a full list, there's not much to this setup when you do a new one. It is the ISO code, the numeric code, how the address format works, address, contact address after the company name, state name is what you want here, and tax schemes. So if you use the beginning data when you set up your company, all of this will be pre-populated for you. So you want to assign it to the country region. City, state, zip, easy enough. Phone number, easy enough. You will have to populate one of the phone numbers if you want to use the calling. Okay, email. This is the default email that all invoices or quotes or orders are going to go to. Now, as we saw, there's more than one contact, right? There's Robert Towns, which we've chosen, but this is another place I can add contacts and see contacts for this customer group. Let me turn that off. Under invoicing, this customer needs to be the same as this customer. This one is not, as a sample that I did. Essentially, this is saying this is the parent customer to this customer, and this is the guy that's going to be getting the invoices and sometimes making the payment. For the most part, you always want it to be the same unless it truly is a customer-child relationship. Their tax reg numbers. Now, BC is meant to be used worldwide, so there's a lot here that's not relatable to United States clients. So GLN, if you want to learn more about it, it's the what's your document sending profile, right? Use GLN and the electronic documents can be turned on. You want to copy the sell to address to quote from the company or the person, right? Remember we set up a contact up here. It was a company or a person. That's where it comes down here, company or person. Are they tax liable or are they not? So if you're not doing taxing in your company, just keep tax liable turned off. You may get confused by that because in a new document on the lines, it's going to have a red asterisk next to the tax information. If you don't fill either of those two fields out, you can post just fine. If you fill out one of the tax fields, both of the tax fields have to be filled out. So you can turn tax liability on or off. If you turn it on, what's the default tax area code? And the tax ID type is legal entity or natural person. Do they have a tax exemption number? Your registration number, the registration number of the customer, 20 characters. General business and customer posting groups. So if you're just learning BC, you may not know about posting groups. In BC, the posting groups control a lot of the background posting, okay? So if you're in like a payables or a purchase order or a sales order, it doesn't matter, you use an item, most of the time the posting for the debits are going to be whatever you put in that item. However, the other side, the AP or AR account, payment discount accounts, things like that, are going to come from your posting groups. General business posting group has more to do with products and sales. Customer posting group has to do with your AR accounts. So I'm going to go to select from a full list, and we're going to look at this list. I've got one. You can have multiple and assign them out depending on the customer. So if you're tracking your AR by region in your general ledger accounts, then that would be a case for more posting groups. But this is saying this one's using this receivable account. If payment discounts are used or interest, if I send them a reminder and charge them finance charges or interest, what's the interest? What's the additional fees? What's the rounding account in case there's rounding involved? Payment tolerances. So when you set up a payment tolerance, which we can talk about in a little while, you're saying most of the time it's $1. So if the customer sends you just $1 less, then you would put that in the apply information, and your payment tolerance account would shoot that dollar over into these accounts. Okay, so that's the posting group. Remember, you can have multiple depending on how your company tracks AR, AP. Same with inventory. You can set up inventory posting accounts based on warehouse and a ton of other functionality. And that is because, as opposed to GP and some other ERP packages, Business Central is meant to be set up by stakeholders. Where do you want this going? And it comes out of the hands of most users so that they don't have to really remember GL account numbers. This system is architected to code where it should code without users having to intervene. Currency codes. If you set your company up with some of the sample data or setup data, you can have these country codes or currency codes pre-set up. And if I go to the full list, you can see the ISO code, the numeric code, the exchange rate date. And for a lot of multi-currency in Business Central, you can actually set up an exchange rate service that can automatically update your exchange rates. Price calculation method, lowest price or leave blank. Customer price group. If you're going to assign them to an existing price group, it would be here. And this is what the price group kind of looks like. There's a code, there's a price calculation method, whether you want to allow line discounts or allow invoice discounts, which we talked about a little while ago. Purchase including tax, tax business posting, group, etc. So if you want to specify price groups, you can also specify discount groups the same way. Okay? Those, if I go to select from a full list and I go down here to large account, there's not much to the setup and the select customer discount groups. So we're going to talk about customer discounts on another blog. Invoice discount code, you'll see, is the same as the customer number. Payments. You can set up a prepayment percentage for this customer that would prompt an immediate prepayment if they want something shipped. Application methods. Let's talk about that. Manual or apply to oldest. If you do apply to oldest, then essentially you get kind of locked out of choosing which invoices are being paid. So most of the time, apply to oldest isn't going to work for most companies. If you leave it on manual, when you go to apply payments or credit memos or what have you, you can pick which invoices those items get applied to. So I would keep that at manual unless your company has a policy to immediately apply it to the oldest. If so, then apply to oldest will add a level of automation to that makes things easier for your company. Partner type, company or person. Intrastat partner type can be chosen here, company or person. Payment terms. Payment terms are really easy to set up in Business Central. This one, for instance, 1 month with a discount at payment at 8 days. And it's really easy. 1M at the 8-day mark. Give them a 2% discount, and then you can give it a description out here. And you can import to that window. Payment method code. I prefer account, payment on account. And again, these are the pre-set up setup data that comes when you set up a new Business Central company. If you set up the bank or card payments or cash payments just right, then when you post the invoice, if you set this to say bank, and I had it all set up in the background to do it, then when I posted an invoice for this customer, it would immediately post a payment for that invoice in full. So if you set it to cash or some of these others that are set up, so if I go to select from a full list, if I do bank, the balance account is that checking account, is my pre-set up checking account. So it's immediately going to get paid and applied to that checking account. Cash payment, generally a cash payment, that would be a bank account and that would be your account number. If somebody's put a balance account number in your payment methods, then essentially it's going to immediately pay with that method. So you want to be careful. I tend to use payment on account. That way I can choose what account, etc., etc. Reminders terms. Reminder terms codes are for collections. So you've seen places where I can print reminders. You can set up reminder codes pretty easily. So I've got domestic customers and foreign customers. This is not really set up right, but I'm going to say I can give a max number of reminders of like 3, and the minimum amount could be $1. So if even $1 went past due, I could send them a reminder. The reminders are like mini statements, but it's only going to send them what they haven't paid yet and how much they owe on it. And the reminders can be emailed and automated to go out to your customers. You can also put in here additional fees per line, and you can post interest if they're not paying on time. Finance charges, you can apply finance charges, 1.5% for domestic customers. This is gonna, when you do reminders or what have you, you can automatically calculate and post finance charges, which would increase the amount that your customers owe. Cash flow payment terms, you can set up automated cash flow in this system. And I can say, for cash flow purposes, is it the same payment term as up here? Or do they generally pay in like 30 days or 70 days or 45 days? That means when I run my cash flow and if I want to do a projection, if this customer owes me $1,000, instead of me assuming I'm going to get the $1,000 for my cash flow in 1 month, I'm saying in reality it's 45 days. Am I printing statements or not? The last statement number was number 2 here. I can also block payment tolerances, and you might want to do this. Let's say you're a rental company and your customers are your tenants, and by law they have to pay 100% of their invoice or it can't be accepted. You can block the payment tolerance, and essentially you cannot post a payment that is not the full amount of the invoice. Come back in here and change that back. Preferred account code, if I had set up a bank account, which I did on this one, what's their preferred bank? Bank communications are in English or French or Spanish. I can choose the format of the date for their communications, maybe day, month, year, or the Americanized month, day, year, or year, month, day. So you can control the check date format and the check separator. These fields are also on vendors. And you can exclude from payment practices. And essentially, it's going to exclude them from all the payment practice calculations. Ship to code, if I'm saying I want to, this is looking at your ship to addresses, what is the default? So I'm going to say most of the time it's going to Lewes Road. And when I ship there, I'm going to ship out of the main warehouse. And I want to combine shipments if possible, or keep it turned off so you can individually ship. Reserve, is it going to be reserved for this customer? Never, automatically, or maybe. Optional. You might want to say always to reserve items. Shipping advice can be partial or complete. If you have a policy to only ship to a customer when their order is complete, you want to keep that at complete. Code, the shipment code, DES, delivered by X ship. You're going to set up these codes, okay? There's not much to them. You can also set up the agent and the agent service, right? And shipping time is 1 day. If you've set up a base calendar, you can put that here, or you can set up a customized calendar. But statistics below are going to give me money owed currently, money expected. This is some really good information here. Overdue payments, total sales, and I've actually got an accounts receivable, and this one's 5 years overdue. Now, by the way, these KPIs and charts are also drillable. So I'm saying if I say that's 4 years, I can actually click that, and it's going to take me to the invoice that's 4 years old to review. So that's setting up a customer. Now, I did say I wanted to talk about templates. So if I'm under, I believe it's other, no, where are the templates? Functions, template, save as template. If I say save this as a template, then many of the fields like document sending profile, credit limit, block, salesperson, some of these setups down here will come over. Will be saved, I should say, as a template. So I'm going to save this as a template, and I'm going to call it a datum. Now it's looking at some of the default information, contact type, company, blocked, number series if I wanted to use it, address. Maybe I don't want to copy the address, right? But document sending profile for invoicing, it's a legal entity, the posting groups, the discount groups, payments, what are payment terms, checkmate format, location codes. So you would want this code up here to be identifiable for what's here, okay? So under the description, you may put something like domestic legal entity, 1 month, 8-day discount, Maine, etc. I'm gonna go ahead and save that. Now let's do a new customer. I can actually press up here to do a new customer. It's immediately, because I said I want to use templates, pulling up the templates. And if I say customer 3 here, the one I didn't name but just did, and OK, then my new customer is now ready to go. I give them a name, but their credit limit set up, their document sending profile. This is very much akin to classes in, say, Dynamics GP, where you could save setup information. If you want to delete a customer, it's just the trash can up here. So let's talk about vendors. There's not many different fields in a vendor setup, okay, but it's the same. I'll go back to the list. It's the same kind of stuff up here. I can actually see their balance, the balance due, same thing, what's due now, their payments, etc. In the top screen here, under home, I can pay them, I can apply a template, I can send them an email. Very much the same stuff, new documents for purchasing. Under the vendor, their ledger entries, assigning tax areas, 1099 statistics, which are different, item tracking, item reference, very much the same things we saw on customers, except geared towards AP. From here, I can get to my vendor list, my vendor ledger entries, etc. Prices and discounts, same as customers, and whether I want to synchronize it across the Dataverse. If I go into a vendor, again, it's same as customers. They have their own contacts, by the way, kept in the same table as customers. I can merge, I can apply templates, I can send them an email, or I can pay them. Approvals can be set up in Power Automate or BC. New document, vendors, same stuff. Dimensions, if there's a default dimension for this particular vendor, I'm going to say customer group, they're small, okay? So you can set up default dimensions. By the way, dimensions can be defaulted on almost all master records. Comments, layouts, statistics, attachments, their bank accounts. Now, we all send more ACHs than we use log boxes or things like that anymore. So bank accounts, if I come in here, I'm going to set up the vendor's bank account, okay? This is for me to automatically send their ACH information to. Okay, so if I set up automatic data exchange with my bank, and I just wanted to push a button, it's going to use those bank accounts. Okay, document layouts can also be assigned per vendor. Prices and discounts, the same as vendors, except these are geared towards purchasing. Same kind of reports. Whether I want to synchronize it across my companies. New documents, functions, templates, save as templates, and they work the same as customers. And then, of course, I can do the general, like I want to create payments under other, pay vendor, or send email. Same stuff we saw over here, right? They have the same attachments, links, and notes. Same with details. I can put in a logo or a picture, and I can see their amount, our amount received not invoiced, the total overdue amounts, the payments I've sent, and yes, they're all drillable. So if I go to payments, it's going to the vendor ledger entries already geared towards payments, and all of their other information here. All right, let's go through it. I'm not going to spend too much time on fields that act pretty much the same, like blocked, last date modified, balance, again, drillable into their vendor ledger entries. Document sending profile, I might say their email as well. Search name is generally the same as the name. If they're an intercompany partner, I'm going to put their code there. The purchaser, who is the purchaser for this vendor? So you can track the purchaser in here just like you track the salesperson in customers. You can also assign vendors to the responsibility centers, and you can turn off search by name. And if you want to track company size code, you can actually do that in here. I do not have any set up because that's not something that I would track. But that's informational, right? Address, countries, regions, phone numbers, mobile phones, emails, a different language code. If you load up the language pack, you can actually communicate with your customers or vendors in their language. You can also set up their format region. Primary contact codes. Again, this is another place I could see all the contacts. And I'm going to say Crystal York is it. Invoicing. What's their tax registration number? Okay. This is not the same as their IRS. Their federal ID for their IRS. This is a tax reg code. What's the GLN for electronic document sending? Are they tax liable or not? If they're not tax liable, you don't have to have a tax area code, even though it's going to show as required. If they're not taxable, that tax code is not required, even though there's a red asterisk there. Vendor number, it's another parent-child thing. So this really should be the same as that, or just blank. Bank communications will be in English. Discount code should be the same as your vendor code in a usual design. Now, if there's an unusual design to your system, that could be different. Price calculation methods can be set up to the lowest price, reg numbers, and that reg number is the registration number of the vendor. Posting details, general business and vendor posting groups. We've talked about how these work, but if I go to the domestic vendors, you can see here it's geared towards payables. Okay, same thing though, your discounts, if they're in a different currency, you would code that in here. Payments, you can put in a prepayment percent that you're required to pay your vendor. Application method is the same. Apply to oldest or manual. Most people want to keep it at manual. Payment terms code is looking at the same table as your customers, so you could assign out your payment terms there. You can assign priorities to payment here. So if they're a priority number 1, you can actually set up the system to make sure, like, I definitely want to pay on every check run my priority number 1s. You can block the payment tolerances for vendors as well. So if you want to make sure you don't underpay a vendor invoice, you can block that payment tolerance. When you do get payments, what's the preferred bank? Partner type, company or person. Intrastat partner type, company or person. Now, obviously, some of these fields you do not have to track. If you're not going to use it, you don't have to fill it out. Cash flow payment terms, we talked about that. Same as customers. When do you really expect it? IRS 1099 code. If you load up the setup data, all of your codes are already pre-set up, right? So minimum reportable, adjustable. So if I go to edit list, I can edit any of these and how they're set up. Okay. FATCA filing, are they required for that? Yes or no? What's their federal ID number? Is this federal ID for a legal entity or a natural person? Creditor number. Okay, so that can be, this is a very interesting setup. This is the vendor number that's a creditor. So it's like I could owe this or owe back in that. You can also set up customer and vendor relationships in BC where this customer is this vendor and the customer can pay off the vendor balances. All of that can be done in BC. I don't have any of that set up to show you though. The same check date format and separator and exclude from payment practices is also on vendors. When you ship to this vendor or get shipments from this vendor, what warehouse is it going to go to by default? What shipment method are you going to request by default? What's your shipping agent code by default? And lead time calculations. Now, a lot of this is going to appear for you after time, but if you want to say when I order, when I finalize a purchase order, it's usually 10 days before I get the product. So that would be your lead time calculation. You can assign this vendor to a base calendar if you've set up the calendars for reporting. And over receipt codes can also be set up. Like, are you allowed to over receive? And if so, what's that policy? Blank, you can just over receive. Okay. See, this is saying it needs a D over here for 10 days. Now it's right. Okay. That's setting up a vendor card. Okay. For vendors and customers, you have vendor ledger entries and customer ledger entries, and they don't have to be limited to a single vendor. So if I go to this vendor's ledger entries, I can actually uncouple it. You're not seeing much there, right? But if I type in customer ledger entries, and I've got a shortcut here, then I can use, these are all of my customers, all of them, and their ledger entries. And this is the list that's used on your home page or wherever else to determine what's past due. So if I wanted to filter this list, I'm going to do now. This is saying any due date before February 29th where the remaining balance is greater than 0. You can see all of these, right? And this remaining amount is what's left due. If I send this out to Excel and total this remaining amount, then that total should agree to my AR balance in my general ledger. You can also turn on analyzing, right, in these lists. And I can say by customer number or by user ID. So I'm going to go to the customer number and get my balances per customer. So to do that, where's customer number in here? There it is, customer number. I'm going to say customer name and drag this field down into my groupings. And now essentially I can open this up and get totals per customer. It's really cool stuff. Okay, so I'm going to turn off analyzing. And if you don't have an analyze button, you can legitimately turn that on in feature management. But that is a field by field customer and vendor setup in Dynamics BC.